Thanks to various events around the world, prices have been steadily rising over the past year or so, nowhere more than the UK, where inflation and the cost of living is spiraling out of control, and it is set to get even worse for low-income families after farming labor shortages could mean prices rise even further. Today, we're discussing these farming labor shortages and what exactly is behind them, so don't go anywhere. First up, what exactly is the situation on the ground? Let's see. It was reported recently that chronic labor shortage could mean families in the UK are set to shell out even more for their food shopping, as the food and farming sector struggles to find workers. The lack of qualified or even interested workers means that the UK is edging towards over-reliance on food imports, which makes their leaving the EU recently look a bit of a silly decision. The problems have arisen since the UK tightened their visa regulations, which meant immigrants are now subject to much stricter language rules, which has meant that previously skilled workers who could have come to work in the country are no longer eligible. But there have been calls from MPs to ease those rules, as it is clearly having a negative knock-on effect on the UK's economy. Defra, the Department for Environment, Foods and Rural Affairs, have been pretty vague about the problem, simply saying they are continuing to work with the sector. Since the UK left the EU, there have been calls from hardliners to restrict immigration even further, but these people obviously haven't thought of the implications of limiting immigration. How ironic then that the people who complain the most about immigrants coming over here taking our jobs are the ones who have no interest whatsoever in working in the food and farming sector. What do you make of the UK's current problem? Give us your thoughts below. So, how bad is the problem? Stay tuned to find out. Well, pretty bad if truth be told. It is thought that at the minute there are more than 500,000 job vacancies in the sector, with the UK hit particularly hard by COVID, coupled with the aforementioned visa restrictions. The sudden decline in labor was caused by restrictions being put in place if you had visited various countries around the world, and being banned from entering if you had been to one of those red list countries. But this, of course, wasn't the biggest cause. The government's introduction of tighter rules for labor workers meant that these jobs were simply going unfilled, and it is thought that last year, almost a quarter of the UK's daffodil crop was left unpicked. At least they had pretty fields, though. The food and farming sector is responsible for around 4 million jobs across the UK economy, so you can imagine how much havoc has been wreaked with 1/8 of those jobs going unfilled. Fruit has been left unpicked, whilst it is thought that around 35,000 pigs were sent to the incinerator due to a lack of skilled butchers and abattoir workers. The government sprang into action in December after a shortage of HGV drivers meant the UK's Christmas turkey supply was under threat. Priorities, right? They set up a temporary visa scheme, but critics said this was simply too little, too late. Are you in need of a job? It seems there are plenty in the food and farming sector. What does all of this mean? Let's discuss. As you can imagine, it's not good, and as usual with things of this nature, the general public and low-income households will be most affected. The government has done little to stem the tide of price rises, and without something changing quickly, the UK people are facing a chain reaction of wage rises, leading to price increases and food production being exported abroad, according to a report. Chairman of Defra, Neil Parish, said that the government's attitude and response in general had been poor, and alluded to the fact that they don't particularly care about food and farming workers. Surprise, surprise. And even MPs in the Commons were flabbergasted at the incomprehensibility of the situation, saying the government had failed to grasp how big the issue actually is. Of course, there is also the Ukraine crisis, which has impacted the UK's food security. This, along with the COVID pandemic and new immigration rules, have combined to form the perfect storm, a storm which the UK economy will do well to recover from in the short term. Nick Allen of British Meat Processors said, "As a result of the conflict in Ukraine, we find ourselves faced with a severe test of the UK's food security. It's clear that this approach has allowed structural weaknesses to develop, which have compromised Britain's food resilience. The UK is now facing a pretty grim situation, one which they have largely brought on themselves." What do you guys think of all this? And what about small to medium-sized businesses? Well, of course, they are in grave danger. If they cannot cultivate and harvest their products, then they will, simply put, go out of business. The labor shortages have been compounded by mass inflation, and National Farmers Union President Minette Batters has claimed she will be encouraging the government to review their immigration policy at the earliest possible opportunity. I mean, the situation wasn't difficult to predict. Of course, a relaxed immigration policy would give smaller businesses the breathing space they so desperately need at the moment, and EFRA's recent report has urged a radical rethink in policy. They have even gone as far as to suggest that the English language requirements be lowered, as this is an industry which has traditionally, globally, relied on immigrant workers. MPs also called for more long-term thinking and plans on how we could use technology to benefit the sector. The Defra report added, "We fully acknowledge that the food and farming industry is facing labor challenges, and we continue to work with the sector to mitigate them. We have given the industry greater certainty by enabling the seasonal workers scheme until the end of 2024, allowing overseas workers to come to the UK for up to 6 months to work in the horticulture sector." They finished by saying they were looking into how a new points-based system could be introduced so that skilled workers could be recruited from anywhere in the world. It seems as though they have shot themselves in the foot, however, so good luck. Next up, the UK job market is still reeling after COVID. Stay tuned. At first glance, one might be forgiven for claiming the UK job market is in pretty good health overall, but a closer inspection suggests that the labor market is showing signs of substantial hidden damage. When COVID first appeared, fears were that it would have untold consequences, mass unemployment and homelessness, but that thankfully hasn't materialized on the whole. But the number of people in full-time work is still 500,000 less than it was at the same period of 2020. If there was no pandemic, a government think tank has suggested that there would be up to 1.25 million more people in jobs right now than there were back in 2020, which is a swing of around 175 million. Some people have taken the pandemic as a sign that retirement is probably the best option. As older people are a lot more vulnerable than other demographics, people only a few years away from retirement when the pandemic kicked in have decided to take early retirement, which is fair enough. Demand has also increased. With more people at home all day, online shopping has increased exponentially, which has had a knock-on effect and exposed the logistics sector. Employers have tried to combat this by offering part-time staff longer hours and sign-on bonuses to new workers. However, inflation and cost of living is putting the squeeze on public sector workers, unfortunately. What do you guys make of this? A much-needed mini-boost to the UK economy now. As you might be well aware, following the illegal war currently being conducted in Ukraine by Russia, prominent Russian businessmen around the globe have been subject to heavy sanctions, and one in particular, Chelsea FC owner Roman Abramovich, has just been relieved of his assets to the tune of $7 billion by a court in Jersey. Earlier this week, authorities on the Channel Isle raided a premises linked to Abramovich, who is on the UK sanctions list thanks to Putin's invasion. Abramovich is a known associate of Putin, but has recently tried to pull the wool over the eyes of authorities by acting as an intermediary in peace talks. The Channel Islands follow UK customs and laws, and their law officers department said the royal court also imposed a formal freezing order on 12 April, known as saisie judiciaire, over assets understood to be valued in excess of $7 billion, which are suspected to be connected to Mr. Abramovich and which were either located in Jersey or owned by Jersey incorporated entities. Good. The only way this illegal war will end is if prominent Russians put pressure on Putin to stop this craziness. What do you think the UK should spend their newfound money on? New farm workers for a start, right? As always, thanks for stopping by, and remember to drop in next time for some more fun and games. Also, why not like, share, and subscribe while you're at it? Bye, guys!